jazzy vibe, isn't it? Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Balie. Good to see all of you here. A special welcome to our guests, Andres and Serrano. Thank you for being here. They are here in the Netherlands because of the opening of the exhibition, your exhibition, America and Trump in Forum, Groningen. I know it's all the way in Groningen, but you can do it. I've been there this weekend, and it's really worth a visit, and we'll talk about that. So you Amsterdam people, you can all do it. You have until November 5th. My name is Laila Frank. I am a journalist, and my work is all about the question, how is change achieved in America? Through art, through activism, through politics, and any other way that you can think of. So it's my great pleasure to interview Andres Serrano. Welcome.
Thank you.
So, welcome back to Amsterdam, first of all.
Sure, yeah.
It's a special place to you, isn't it?
Yeah, I spent 5 months here in 1996 working, so it is a very special place for me.
Yeah, and we'll get back to that. But let's start with the focus of tonight, or actually the focus of last weekend, your exhibition and Donald Trump. And I mean, we live in a world where there's so much attention for the phenomenon Donald Trump. So why did you, as an artist, choose to channel your energy into him, and why?
Well, I've had, you know, I took a special interest in Donald Trump in 2004 when I took his portrait for my America series, which started in 2001. I felt that America had been targeted as the enemy after 9/11, and so I felt like I wanted to show who the enemy is, and so I started to take pictures of people from all walks of life, particularly those that were involved in 9/11, the firefighters that had been going through the rubble of the World Trade Center, the police, the army, an airline pilot. And from there, I started photographing people that I felt like symbolized America in some way. You know, working class people, middle class people, one undocumented person, probably a migrant worker. And then I went on to photograph the celebrities like Yoko Ono, B.B. King, Anna Nicole Smith, Ethan Hawke. And eventually, I photographed Donald Trump for it, too.
So what does he symbolize about America to you?
Well, Donald Trump has always been the embodiment of the American dream. At least that's the way he saw himself, and that's the way people saw him. And also, Donald Trump has been courting the media for decades. And so my fascination with Donald Trump later, when I did the game, All Things Trump, you know, my intent was to do a portrait of Donald Trump as seen through the eyes of Donald Trump, meaning collecting all this stuff that was made, merchandise, objects that were made for Donald Trump, for his brand, his casinos, his hotels, his empire, his everything.
And we'll get to that, but let's get back to you can make your deodorant and call it success. You can get away with that when you're Donald Trump. You can. I want to get back to that picture if we can. There he is. I know.
He looks good.
Well, that's the thing. And the thing is, he doesn't seem to age. I can still see the current Donald Trump in this Donald Trump.
Well, you know, he's aged because he's gotten fatter. And the trick about aging is don't get fat. You know, you look good if you don't get fat. You know?
So but what do you see when you look at this picture?
I see a guy who's very, quick on his feet, who's very cautious. I think he couldn't figure me out. You know, I had permission. You know, with these people, you approach them, and then someone else signs off for them, meaning someone else tells you can photograph him or her. And so they don't know. They don't even know who you are sometimes, you know. And he's not the kind of guy who takes much interest. As long as his right-hand person said you're okay, then you're okay. And with Donald Trump, when I took his picture, I was very quiet because I know this guy. If I say anything that's going to upset him, bore him, or make him lose interest, you know, he'll leave immediately. So by being quiet, I just, I got a half an hour of his time, which was is a lot of time, you know. And so I think he's just trying to figure me out.
Did he?
I don't think so. But I figured him out.
Well, I mean, you say your fascination started in 2004, but you grew up in the same town as he did.
I
You're
did,
sort
yes.
of his age.
Yeah.
Was he inevitable to you growing up?
Growing up, you know, I wasn't really paying attention to what Donald Trump was doing, but we all knew Donald Trump, who he was. And, you know, he was a bit of an asshole, a New Yorker who was an asshole, even to other New Yorkers. And so Donald Trump always had that mixed reputation with people. But still, he got attention. He got a lot of attention. The media has always been fascinated with Donald Trump. So they gave him a lot of coverage, even from the beginning of his career.
So, but then again, maybe in a different way, pose the question. Media, they choose to give him attention. You chose to do that as well. Whilst on the other hand, you always say you don't want to judge him. You don't take an opinion on him. Isn't picking a subject a choice in itself?
Oh, sure. I mean, I have opinions. I may not voice them sometimes. You know, first of all, I don't like to say anything bad about Donald Trump because, you know, he posed for me. And anyone who has posed for me, I don't care who they are, a Klansman, whoever they are, you know, I'm going to have a soft spot for them. You know, I'm going to think kindly of them because they didn't have to do it. And so, but I have my, you know, feelings about Donald Trump, as everyone does. You know, I see the good and bad in him, you know,
well,
like everyone
that's not
else.
something everybody. You say you see the good and bad. I think most people either love him or hate him. Isn't part of what you're trying to do with the exhibit to pose a question about him? Do we actually know him?
I think we know him to some extent. We know how he projects himself. We know what he wants to be. He wants to be all things to all people. Donald Trump doesn't care if you love him or hate him, really. I mean, I think he wants you to love him. He wants you to be a supporter. He wants you to, you know, give him money when he asks for it, and he wants you to vote for him. But if, you know, but also he wants attention. He needs attention. And so his ego demands that we pay attention to him, regardless of what that attention is.
Yeah, one of my, because we're going to go to the exhibit, and one of my favorite objects in the exhibit was an invite for his 47th birthday party. Here it is. Because I wasn't sure what I was looking at. Am I looking at a guy with a great sense of self-mockery or a guy with a huge ego?
Both.
Both.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
I think early on, you know, Donald Trump had a great sense of humor. He doesn't show it now, but it comes out because sometimes when he insults people, he's funny. You know, he may be nasty, but he's funny, funnier than the other guy.
True. So about the exhibit, like all things Trump, all these things that you collected, what was the process like? Is that an eBay exhibit? Like, how do you do it?
I spent many hours on eBay, you know, almost sometimes 5-6 hours a day, trying to see whatever came up on eBay related to Donald Trump that was of interest to me. And I bought a lot of things, you know, big and small, casino chips that were made for his casinos, invitations like this, you know, and then big objects. And the biggest object that I got was the ego sign, which is a sign that's about 11 feet high. It spells the word ego, and it was from the Trump Taj Mahal Ego Lounge. And for me, the ego sign tells you everything you want to know about Donald Trump.
Are we talking eco, E-C-O, or E-G-O?
EGO.
Yeah, okay.
Ego, everything you want to know about Donald Trump, because everything revolves around his ego.
So is there anything left on eBay now? Or did you buy all of
There's
it?
a lot of things on eBay. There's things on eBay now all the time.
Was there something in there that you really wanted that you couldn't get?
I think I got everything I wanted except for maybe one thing, because I got very good at bidding on eBay. I would take a note of something, and then I wouldn't put a bid on it necessarily. I would just wait. take a, make a mental note or a reminder to myself of when the auction would end, when the bidding would end. And so I would bid maybe 15 seconds before it ended, and I would put a bid so outrageous that nobody came close to me. And so, I got everything I wanted except for one thing, and I forget what that was.
Do you have the feeling that you got to know him better through creating this exhibit? And what did you learn about him?
I learned that he's good at playing the media. He's good at getting people to go along with him. He was good at talking all these companies, Pepsi Cola, all kinds of companies, the Sharper Image, into making deals with him. I mean, the Sharper Image, he came out with Trump steaks with the Sharper Image. It was a steak that went for $1,000. It went out of business in 3 months, but still, the audacity of Donald Trump, you can't beat it. A lot of things that Donald Trump put his name to went out of business, like Trump Vodka, Trump Shuttle, Trump University, and along with Trump University books and lessons, I also got a Trump University diploma. This one, to Alex van den Kolk. He sounds Dutch, in fact.
It does.
So that's a real diploma, someone who probably spent thousands of dollars for a course that didn't do much for him, probably.
Wow.
Courses. Because you could pay $5, $10, $15, I think up to $35,000 for courses in a school that was not accredited.
I also hear a little bit of admiration somewhere. Is that correct?
Well, you got to admire anyone with such a huge ego and so outrageous about it, because we all have egos, some more than others, but I think we all have egos. I mean, I'm an artist. I have an ego. Writers have egos. Gore Vidal, one of my favorite authors, he said, it's not enough to succeed. Others have to fail. I mean, that's an ego for, and so it's a healthy thing to have an ego, but you gotta, you gotta wonder, man, what makes this guy tick? How can you have that kind of ego? The game, All Things Trump, is based on a Monopoly type game called The Game that Donald Trump came out with in 1989. And on the box, you have a picture of Donald Trump and a quote from Trump, and it says, it's not whether you win or lose, it's whether you win. And so that's Donald Trump's motto. He will never admit that he lost, because it's all about winning. And so he likes people who win, and he sees himself as a winner even when he loses.
What did it teach you about America? Did it teach you anything about America, creating this?
Well, first of all, I don't know if it taught me anything about America. It taught me something about the Republican Party. It taught me how much, they were whores who were, happy to get him to bed with Donald Trump and to, they have no sense of decency left. Donald Trump taught them it's okay to lie, it's okay to be stupid, it's okay to be, vindictive. I thought the Republican Party was better than that, but they're not, And so Donald Trump is one person. He had he had not only the Republican Party behind him, now he's got the Supreme Court behind him too, because he was smart. Him and Mitch McConnell were very smart in putting their people into the Supreme Court. And so, it's a big blow for many people, for women, for all kinds of people. And I don't blame Trump as much as those who enabled Trump and gave him the power to be who he is. And, and I say that not as a criticism, because I can't say that one side is better than the other. I've seen a lot of shit from the other side, so there's no right or wrong side, really.
That's almost like a Trumpian expression. I think we'll get to that, but I also want to get to Insurrection, your movie, the movie that you made about the storming of the Capitol, in which I think you take a stance, actually. You do, don't you? Or you're trying to...
What is that stance?
Well, you have said in interviews that it's very much about race. and about, well, now I'm going to put your words into your mouth, which I don't want to do. Maybe you can explain what it means to you and why you felt the need to make that movie and talk about that.
Well, the movie I made because after I finished the game All Things Trump, I felt I'm done with Trump until the insurrection happened. And then I felt like I need to make a film about this because now this, too, is part of Trump's legacy, right. So I had to add it to the game. And, I wasn't there, so I with the help of my team, two guys who work for Apolitical, an organization based in London that has supported my causes before. My editor, Sebastian Patcher, edited the film. And then my producer, really, the guy who put together all the films for me to look at, George Chetwood, he found like more than 100 videos taken by people who were there that day, and they put them on all kinds of platforms, including Parler and other things. So in the end, the credits will show you that the videos that I used in that film came from like over 100 sources. And so, and my intent was to show what it was like to be there from beginning to end. And but also, it sort of does refer to D.W. Griffith's Birth of a Nation, because it uses the title cards and
maybe you have to explain Birth of a Nation. I'm not sure if everybody knows the reference.
Well, Birth of a Nation is one of the greatest films ever made. Also, one of the most racist films ever made, but it's a film like Potemkin, meaning it was done, I think, in 1917, and without Birth of a Nation did a lot of things, technical things that later became part of the cinema's vocabulary, and so Birth of a Nation is a very, very important work. It's also a problematic work.
It is. So why did you choose to make that reference in Insurrection?
That was Sebastian's, idea, and I thought that was pretty good. That we make it as a DJ Trump production, meaning that it's like Donald Trump is producing the film. Because I do think that Donald Trump would be happy with the film, because it shows how he worked the crowd. He told them to go there and do what they needed to do, and they did it. And so I think Donald Trump would be happy with the film. I think the insurrectionists who were there, who were not arrested, are happy with what they did. And so, on the other hand, if you don't like what happened that day, then you won't like what you see. That doesn't mean you'll hate the film. But, one of the things that I feel I've done is that I've recorded a moment in history, because after the insurrection, the Republicans spent a long time, with investigations and committees, and in the end, feeling that nothing really happened, that it really wasn't that bad. But so if you see the film, you see it was pretty bad.
Yeah. And why, I'm going to try this once more, because I feel that we're not getting to the racial aspect of it, which you have been very explicit about in interviews.
Oh, yeah, sure. Well, what I've said is that if they were black people marching onto the Capitol in that way, I'm talking about tens of thousands. I don't know how many people were there. It may look like 10,000 people at least, if not more. If you had 10,000 angry black people marching to the Capitol, they wouldn't have gotten that far, because I think the militia would have been there, the National Guard, the Army, the SWAT teams, so I don't think it could have happened if these were black people marching onto the Capitol in that way.
Yeah. How are you looking towards the upcoming elections as an American, as a citizen?
I'm curious. I'm curious what's going to happen. I feel like a lot of Europeans are more alarmed than Americans. I'm not a great voter. I didn't vote, even though I was born in New York City, I didn't vote until Obama came into, up for election. And then I voted for him twice. So I don't have such a great voting record or interest in voting. And besides, I'm a New Yorker, so we know how that state is going to go. My vote doesn't matter.
Do you think politics matter?
Maybe. But, I think it's curious because a lot of people, they try to shame you into voting. When you say, I don't want to vote, they say, you got to vote. You got to vote. No, you don't got to vote because it's your right to vote. It's also your right not to vote because you are saying something by not voting. You're saying you're not happy with either candidate. You're saying you don't believe in the system. And I think a lot of people, particularly young people, people of color, people who are not happy with what they see from the White House are not going to vote.
Are you going to vote this time?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so. I can't. In all good conscience, I can't vote.
No.
Let things be what they will be.
What will they be?
I have no idea. Because Donald Trump is facing a lot of things right now. I don't know if he can run. Maybe he runs, but he's got this lawsuit. He's got a lot of things coming up, So they're doing everything possible to make sure he doesn't run. But in a way, I feel like, it'd be disappointing if he didn't run because when you go to a boxing match, you want to see two guys, box. You want to see a boxing match. You don't want a disqualification on technicalities. So, we want to see a fight.
We will see a fight. I'm pretty sure of that. Let Trump be for a second, and let's focus on you and your work as an artist. And I realized, thinking about Trump and religion, which is a thread in your work as well, that they are both so very present in every aspect of American life. So there is a commonality. Can you explain the role of your faith in your work?
Well, I was born and raised a Catholic, and I made my confirmation, my Holy Communion when I was 8, confirmation when I was 12. And then I stopped going to church, but I've always seen myself as a Christian. And, but I'm the kind of Christian that I don't need to talk about my faith. I don't need to push anybody into thinking, about Christ or about religion. I've known a lot of people who I didn't even know their faith until years. I've known a lot of people I didn't even know they were Jewish. Good friends. For 20 years I've known them. I didn't even know they were Jewish, So religion doesn't come up in my world, really. I don't really talk about it. It doesn't matter. But I am a Christian. But because I did Piss Christ, which is very controversial, and a lot of people see it as sacrilegious, and for the last more than 20 years, some people have been denouncing me as being sacrilegious and blasphemous. It was very important last year when on the 50th anniversary of the Vatican collection, Contemporary Art Collection, I was invited along with 200 other people from all walks of life, artists, writers, intellectuals, invited to hear the Pope give a sermon at the Sistine Chapel. And afterwards, everyone had a moment to go up to the Pope. And when it was my turn, I went to the Pope, and knowing that, you only have a few seconds, I spoke to him in Spanish because he's from Argentina. And I said to him, Your Holiness, my name is Andres Serrano, and I come here for your blessing. And he smiled at me. He took my hand. He tapped me twice, and then he gave me a thumbs up. And afterwards, the press said to me, "You're the only one he gave a thumbs up to." And that, as the creator of Piss Christ, was what I needed.
You're done. This is it.
Not only the visit, I needed the thumbs up from the Pope.
So, okay, you're good with the Pope, or the Pope is good with you now. Still,
Yeah.
a lot of other people are pretty pissed off, no pun intended, with you, especially conservatives and, conservatives groups in the U.S.
Yeah, you can't do nothing about those people, some people, they're, locked into a certain thinking that their way of life is the only way. I thought, to be a Christian means to be tolerant, but some people who are Christians are not very tolerant.
I mean, there's a school of thought in the U.S. who's saying that we're going towards a theocracy. Do you feel they have a point?
Yeah, it could be. There's a lot of right-wing people in politics, a lot of people trying to push forward fundamentalist, conservative Christian agenda. You know, I mean, this thing with, you know, the overturning of Roe v. Wade
Abortion.
after years, I mean, that is like incredible. I mean, it's a tragedy, but it's also absurd that all of a sudden a bunch of people could decide that, no, the woman does not have a right to decide for herself what she should do with her child, her body, or her life. So, you know, we go forwards and then we go backwards at the same time.
You just refer to the fact that people see you as a sort of a rebel rouser, and that
I hope so.
You hope so. So I think Trump would say that's part of the strategy, right? You stir up the pot. It's kind of. I think he would approve.
I'd hope so. You know, I think if Trump saw that show, he would like it because he would see a lot of things that he would remember. He would say to himself, oh, I remember when we did that campaign. Oh, I remember that coming out. So he would see a lot of things that, you know, would make him smile again.
But how important is it to you that you stir up something, that you stir up a debate, maybe even a political one? How important is the reaction of an audience for you as an artist?
Well, it's important. But I never know what the reaction will be. You know, I prefer for people to like my work. If they get upset, you know, that's okay because at least they feel something. You know, sometimes you go to art galleries and even museums where you see things that they don't, you know, move you one way or the other. You forget about it. So it's nice to be able to make work that has an effect on people one way or the other.
One way or the other. Do you have... oh, well, there we go. Yeah. I forgot about that one.
There's a picture I took in Amsterdam.
You did. Yeah. We have a reputation. You talk about the Catholic part inside of you, and you also talk about how there are these big conservative voices. I was wondering if through your work, your identity as a Catholic has evolved or changed, or do you have an internal debate about the external voices who are screaming against you being a progressive Catholic and your personal values?
Well, you know, I was in therapy with one therapist for 30 years, and he was like a friend, you know. He was a friend because he understood me, and he allowed me to be myself. You know, he made it clear from the very beginning that whatever was on my mind was fine. Because, you know, I remember the first time I saw him, I spent, 45 minutes with him. And afterwards he said to me, well, do you have any thoughts, any feelings about the session, how it went? I said to him, well, you know, first of all, you're a black man, and I thought I was going to get a white woman for a therapist. And he said, And I said, you know, so as a black man, you know, I'm not sure if you're as good as a white therapist would be. And he said, okay, let's talk about that next week. And it never came up again, you know, and I stayed with him for 30 years. So, you know, and then he retired, and then I stopped seeing him. But there are times when I feel like the only one left for me to talk to is God.
That reminds me that in the beginning of the conversation you mentioned aging. Don't get fat while aging. Mm-hmm. Does art get more... How does art change? Does art change when you get older? Or do you as an artist change when you get older?
I will always, evolved. I think I've evolved, but in a way, you know, that evolution has been natural for me. You know, one picture leads to another, one idea, one series leads to another. And so I think, it's been natural for me. Last year I started painting, you know, which is natural also. It's, even though I never did it before, I studied painting and sculpture when I was 17 at the Brooklyn Museum Art School. But after 2 years, I felt I couldn't paint, and so I started taking pictures because I lived with a girl who had a camera, so I started taking pictures with Millie's camera. But I always saw myself as an artist, not as a photographer. But last year I actually started painting and using my hands and having fun doing that because I never did that before. So I think it's an evolution of my work. I don't think I've changed as much as the art world. The art world has changed, particularly in the States, in New York, you know.
How has it changed?
Well, a lot of times you feel like people are sort of on edge, curators and other people, directors of museums. Uh, they have to be on their toes not to offend anybody and to make sure they include certain people, certain groups. So I feel like there's a tendency to make art that's politically correct and not necessarily, at the expense of other work, because they're not in favor. And so, I think it's judging art not so much by the art, but by the artist, and the artist has to fit into a certain box to be even considered for an exhibition.
And do you feel the younger generation rides that wave, or obviously the younger generation suffers from that as well? I guess people are excluded as well. Is there anybody in the younger generation that you are eyeing right now that you think should get a chance and, for example, doesn't?
Well, I can't say because I don't go to many shows, and if I see them having a show, that means they're getting somewhere, I'm not on social media. I'm not, my wife is on Instagram, but I don't, once in a while she'll let me look at what she's posted, but I'm not on social media, so I don't really know what other people are doing. I just know that there's a certain climate of, a wave of repression, I feel. And a lot of times that repression is coming from within. Some art that I think is being considered now for, by younger artists, I think sometimes, they're judging how many Instagram followers you have. If you have 500,000 Instagram followers, maybe you can get into Gagosian, And so there are other things other than the way it was when I was making art, and there was no Instagram, there was no social media. So things have changed. They change for the better, and they also are different. So you got to get used to it. And sometimes you don't feel comfortable in that circle because you don't belong in that circle.
But do you feel there's less freedom as an artist in this?
No, I think there's less freedom. We all know there's a lot of things you can't talk about, either, in conversation, in writing, or in art.
Yeah. Do you have any red lines that you don't want to cross in your work, or is everything possible?
Oh, everything's possible in my work, I mean, I've never felt like there was something I wanted to do that I shouldn't do. So, no, it's been okay for me as far as what I do.
You said, or maybe I've read it, I'm not sure, but that your period in Amsterdam, which was when again exactly? 1996. One of the happiest ones of your life.
Yeah, because I was happy working. I'm happy when I work. And I spent 5 months in Amsterdam doing these sex pictures. And so I was very happy, and I had fun. It was not all work, I went out to, music is important for me. So I would be out clubbing a lot, and going to fetish parties. They were fun. And so it was, when you're doing your own thing, it's always fun.
That's true. But did Amsterdam give you something in a creative way, or for you as an artist that America didn't?
It gave me a lot of ideas. It gave me access to a lot of things, a lot of people. The reason why I came to Amsterdam to do this work was because I was about to have a show at the Groningen Museum, and Mark Wilson, the curator, who was an American, he said to me, before you come for your show, the museum would like to invite you to come here and do some work here. And I said to him, well, Mark, I started a new show, a new series called The History of Sex, so I don't have time to go to Holland to make work about the Dutch. And he said, if you're doing sex pictures, why don't you come to Amsterdam? And so it made sense. So I came to Amsterdam. The museum gave me a big budget, enough to live on for 5 months, and bring my assistant as well. We both had separate, apartments in different parts of the city. And so that kind of support was good, very good.
Do you feel? I mean, you've walked through. Well, you didn't walk through town today. You've been back a couple of times.
A few times, yeah.
Do you think this city has changed?
Well, I saw it changing even when I got here, because when I got here, I remember there's a street near, near the center that had a lot of clubs, a lot of bars, straight bars, coffee shops, gay bars, all kinds of bars. And there were these posters that they were putting out, these, promoters, club promoters, and they were small like that. And they were promoting gay clubs, and some of those images were hardcore. I mean, even though they were drawn, it was men getting fucked in the ass, on the street. And I saw that, they were there when I first got here. By the end of the 4th month, I saw they disappeared. They were being taken down. So I felt like the scene, many things started to, tone down. And later on, when I was here, there were like, 20 coffee shops within 2 or 3 blocks, I don't know if there are that many coffee shops now. So I felt like, Amsterdam became more like a European city, attracting more tourists who wanted to drink rather than smoke pot.
Is it still an interesting city to you?
Absolutely, yeah, sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
The Dutch are great people.
Well, that I can confirm. Mm-hmm. I was wondering because we are. This is the famous piss poster. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if that's the correct word. You've mentioned sex. You have mentioned the Ku Klux Klan. You've mentioned Donald Trump. Didn't mention your beautiful series about the unhoused. I guess I'm trying to figure out what is it in a topic or a person that makes it interesting to you as an artist.
Well, when I photograph people, and I photograph a lot of people, a lot of times I'm photographing a person, an individual, but also a sort of symbol, an icon. And so I like to make people bigger than life. For America, people represented themselves, but they also represented something else sometimes. And so portraiture has always been important for me. A lot of times, like the Klan, those are portraits. The morgue, those are portraits of dead people. So, a lot of times I think and see my work in terms of portrait. People have said to me, what about a self-portrait? You ever think about doing a self-portrait? And I say, well, what do you think my work is? Everything is a self-portrait.
Right. How do you get people to trust you?
You ask them, you talk to them, you ask them, I mean, that's the only way to do anything. You find the right people, because not everyone will go along with what you have in mind, but you have to find the right people.
Is that a skill in itself, or is that luck? What is it?
That's a combination of luck, of knowing the right people, and also having people who believe in what you're doing and try to help you.
Yeah.
So that is luck.
Yeah. What are you working on right now?
Well, right now I've been painting, and what I'm painting is really, I'm painting, I'm taking photographs, photographs of antique sculptures like Michelangelo sculptures, classical sculptures, Greek, Roman sculptures. And so they're black and white images that I blow up very big, and then I paint over them. And then, I paint over them and give them color, try to make these pieces of stone come to life. And, and I put a lot of myself in it, so, it's fun, and I can interpret these sculptures in any way that I want. One of my pietas, I've done a series of pietas based on Michelangelo's Pieta. One of the pietas was accepted by the Vatican, so I'm very happy about that.
You're really getting in there.
I'm getting in there, yeah.
Access.
I'm getting
Full
in
access.
there, and because I come from a long line of religious artists.
Well, do you see yourself in that tradition?
Absolutely, sure. Caravaggio, Michelangelo.
The big boys.
I've always said, if you're going to learn from the best.
I'm also looking, because this is just us, it's an intimate setting, so it's also your floor. If you have any questions for Mr. Serrano, please feel free to raise your hand. Or not. Yes.
What's the thing with piss, man? Like, why use piss?
You're going to get a microphone, I'm sorry.
What's the thing with piss? Why use piss in a lot of your... I mean, it stands, maybe not, but maybe it signifies something, or if anything. Why piss?
It's a long story, but not really. It's a short story, and it's a very simple explanation. In 1986, I got a visit from a curator at the New Museum, Bill Olander, who was very supportive of my work, even though I felt like I wasn't worthy of some of the things some of the shows he put me in. He put me in shows with like people like Cindy Sherman and Clegg and Gutman and the postmodernists, and shows, they have reputations. I didn't have a reputation. But he was doing a show called Fake at the New Museum. And he came to visit me, and even though I felt like my work didn't fit for that show, his visit made me think about something that I had never thought about before. Because Fake, the show that he was doing, was about artists who were doing work in one medium that looked like something else, something other than what it was. And so I thought, after Bill's visit, I thought, why don't I do photographs that look like paintings? And the first picture that I did with a bodily fluid was called Milk Blood. It's a reference to Mondrian, and it's a picture that's half white, half red, and that's all it is. There's a tank filled with milk and another one with blood, and from there I went on to do other works that were very abstract, blood, which is a picture of blood, a monochrome of blood, milk, which is a picture all white, and then piss, because I realized that in the beginning I was only doing pictures with milk and blood, but I needed a third color to add to my palette, so piss became the color. So in the beginning, the bodily fluids were being used in a very abstract way. Later on, people have said, oh, it's like, were you talking about AIDS? Are you referring to AIDS? Not really. I was looking at the fluids in another way, more in terms of formal, considerations, rather than, political things like AIDS. But, it fit into the postmodern, setting at the time of what postmodernism was. And so that's the simple explanation, that, it was really a way of doing a photograph that would not look like a photograph, that would look more like a painting that was, in fact, a fake painting.
Is there fun? I mean, you're going to create a little reaction, right, when you're going to use urine in art?
Not really. You don't. When I made the piss pictures, Piss Christ, for instance, I was working in a vacuum. Nobody knew me. I was unknown. So you don't really think that this picture that you're doing is different from any other picture you're doing. And so I didn't, have any idea that the picture would be denounced in Congress and that it would become a big deal.
Well, I'm also asking because I can imagine that it must be fun as well to sort of stir it all up, and that there might be a little bit of joy in there. But
it's fun to be oblivious and do your work in a vacuum, because then you're not limited,
Do you feel limited these days, now that you're more known?
I'm not limited, except my speech, maybe, my thoughts,
Really?
We all have to be guarded about what we say and what we think, of course.
Is there something, I mean, it's just us. Is there something you really want to say but can't say out loud?
Not at all.
But do you, I mean, honestly, because you've touched upon it a couple of times, this limitation of freedom as an artist, or maybe even as a human being. How do you read this moment in time?
I think it's a moment in time, and I think maybe a lot of good things will come out of it. it feels almost like, we're going back to the McCarthy era in a way.
Yeah.
Because I really, that for me, I was a child then. Really, I grew up in the 60s, the sense of liberation, the sense of revolution, music, drugs, social revolution, political revolution, civil rights, women's rights, everything was happening, And so it was a great time to be alive. Bob Dylan, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, everything was happening. And so everything was new. Everything was possible. We thought everything was possible. And we acted that way. We didn't know that we weren't supposed to do some certain things or think certain ways, And so, it was a good time to be alive.
Absolutely. And please wait for the mic.
I've got an loud voice. I'll do it without the mic.
It's good for the recording online.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so this relates to two things. The series in the morgue, which I loved, the photographs, the way that they make of something really distressing, something really beautiful. And I love them for that. But seeing this particular photograph again now, the one we saw a while ago, I realised that these days we don't show images of recognisable dead people without their permission. Obviously, these people are dead and they haven't given their permission, I'm assuming. And it does make me look differently at it. And I'm not sure that it's a bad thing that we don't do that anymore. And I wonder, two things. I wonder if you feel you could make a series of works like that now. And I wonder if you would feel differently making a series of works like that now, in the light of the way that we, in general, are thinking differently about questions of dignity and privacy and that kind of thing. And if you think you wouldn't make it now, do you feel that as a limitation, or do you feel that as just a way in which you've grown, or we've grown, to look at things differently? And if not with that work, are there other works that you've made that you now, looking back, feel, oh, I wouldn't make that work anymore because of a different way of looking at things, not in a repressive sense, but just simply in a sense of a different way of thinking about things?
Yeah, no, there's nothing that I regret doing. I wouldn't do the morgue again because I already did it. But, when I did the morgue, I had the permission of the man in charge of the morgue, and with the understanding that I could photograph anybody I wanted to, just as long as, their identities would not be revealed. And so sometimes there was information that I turned around, and I made sure that nobody would be recognizable. And so the morgue, I've always referred to the people that I photographed as people, as dead people, but as people. People have said corpses. I never used the word corpses because I felt they were human beings. Even if they didn't look like they looked like when they were alive, to me there was still a presence, a sense of humanity there. Yeah, and so I was very respectful of, and like I said, no one has ever been recognized, so that I felt like, either if I hadn't done my work, these people would have just been buried. At least, I did something that I feel good about, meaning that I made art from something that would have been forgotten.
Are you also trying to ask if there's any limitations in art, or like if it's a free space?
No, I'm not trying to ask that. I'm simply curious
About these ones specifically.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in the light of the way that we are in general, have we started to think differently about some issues, not just for the sake of political correctness, but simply because we realise that those kind of things are not the right way to be looking at things or behaving about things. So I wondered if you had absorbed any of that rather than just said, it's too bloody politically correct.
You know, there's another work that I've never been able to do that relating to the dead. Memento mori pictures, Memento mori pictures were very common in the Victorian era, where, photographers took pictures of dead people for their loved ones, but you need permission, and you need access. And so it's a lot of work, it's a lot of work. I wouldn't know where to start, if I had access to a funeral parlor that would talk to people who are grieving, who would want for me to do a memento mori picture. So I would do that. And of course, there you need permission, but there, you also have the intent to do a picture that they can have, of their loved ones.
Yeah. U krijgt een microfoon.
Your work and the work of Peter Joel Whitkin. Can you maybe make a comparison?
I like Joel Peter Whitkin's work, but it's different from mine. But he's very aesthetic, and Joel has his way of working. I don't know where Joe went to photograph the dead that he photographed, I think in Mexico or other places. I don't know how Joe did it, but I like Joe's work.
Yes, we have a question here in the front.
Andres and Irina, thanks for being here. I heard in your story, the way I perceive it, your body of work also represents the decades of your life and the periods you've been going through. I was just reflecting on 96, because I was living in Amsterdam as well, and I remember it was also AIDS period. So in a way, it's fascinating because I didn't get to know your work until later. But if you reflect on that here period, sex also got a different angle because of the disease related to it. And still, your body of work was all related with, sex as the main topic. So how did you, if you look back at that period, how do you reflect on your body of work related to the AIDS pandemic we had at the time?
Yeah, I don't know if there's any connection, really. It was a moment in time for all of us and for me as an artist, but true, AIDS became a big problem in the 90s, yeah. Maybe even before. I think it was even before the 90s.
With the...
Your work wasn't, my question was, if you reflect on it, your work wasn't actually, some people got very critical on the whole sexual scene here in Amsterdam, and I was actually living downtown in that area you were referring to, and things change, but things change all the time.
Mm.
If we reflect on your body of work related to the decade you made it, how do you look at it right now?
Right now?
Yeah, if you look back at it.
Well, it was a moment in time. It was a wild time, I thought, for Amsterdam. It was very wild. It was a wild time for the Groninger Museum, I mean, we went the other day to the Groninger Museum to see the Kitty Biennial. It's very different from my show. And so I don't know what the Groninger Museum has been doing since then, but it seems like, things get tamed a little bit. As I said, a lot of times shows have to be considered from many angles, and so sometimes that's a good thing, maybe that's a bad thing. I don't know.
So we've been looking back a little bit 2 decades. What are you seeing looking forward to the next decade for you as an artist?
For me, I don't really have any desire to take any pictures at this moment. I'm having fun painting. But one thing I feel like is true in the art world, my paintings I do in sections sometimes, because I don't have room to store. And so I'll take a photograph and do it in 2 sections so I could make it bigger, much taller than me. And I think I got to make them even bigger, because I go to a lot of shows nowadays and I see people, well, not a lot, but enough. it's enough for me. I see the work of people I never heard of, and the only thing that I see is that the fucking thing is huge. So, that's what I got to make, bigger work.
That sounds almost Trumpian. And as I understand, tomorrow is your last day here in Amsterdam with your wife, and you're going to see more art, right?
Absolutely. We're going to the Rijksmuseum. Last year, they acquired one of my pieces. So
Which one?
I'm not sure. I don't know. Which one? One of the nomads, one of the homeless portraits I did
beautiful.
in 1990. Yeah. And we're going to the Stedelijk Museum as well. So I think, and then we're going to see Mark Wilson, the curator who did my show at the Groninger Museum, in 1997. So that's it.
Well, that sounds like a lovely day. I want to thank you and you, Irina. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you
all for being present. There's drinks at the bar. And have a good night. See you next time.
Thank you.